What's up guys, I'm Steve Wells and today we are going to be talking about my go-to long run shoe that I'm on the third version of now, running through all of them, and that is the Hoka One Arahi 5. So this shoe is one of Hoka's, I would say, medium for Hoka cushioning everyday trainers. It is a stability shoe. It has this kind of J-frame is what they call it. This like different colored material is a little bit denser than the rest to kind of help stand up to pronation a little bit more. So your feet are going to the inside. It's going to stand up to that extra pressure a little bit better in theory than some other neutral shoes will. And I do run in neutral shoes for most of my training, but on long runs I tend to gravitate towards something that is a little bit more stable to help me out as I'm getting tired. Before we get started, head down to the description, click my Patreon link down there. That's the best way to help me out, help out the channel. Be sure to like and subscribe as well to help keep me doing what I'm doing. But let's get into it. I will not be going over the tech specs of this shoe. They will be down in the description if you're interested in that kind of thing. But we will check out the weight. So this is a size 11.5, men's 11.5. It is 10.6 ounces. So let's compare that weight to the previous versions of this shoe. So this is the Arahi 4, 11.0 ounces. So a little bit heavier than the 5. And the 3 is 10.5 ounces. So, I mean, all relatively similar to each other. The 3, I've worn off a lot of material on the bottom, so I don't know if that impacts the weight or not dramatically, but they all seem to weigh about the same. So if you've run in previous versions, you can expect the same kind of weight in this one. So let's get into some pros about the Arahi 5. So my first pro is a pro that I've had in all of the versions of this shoe, and that is the stability system that it has. I don't tend to wear stability shoes, like I said, because they typically tend to give me knee problems, but whenever I'm on longer runs, I want something that's a little bit more stable to help as I'm getting tired. And this does the job perfectly. I haven't had any problems with feeling like I'm over-supported, under-supported. That's going to obviously change from person to person, but this is a good kind of mild stability shoe, I would say. My next pro is the cushioning. This is what Hoka is known for. I have problems with a lot of Hoka's other shoes in different ways, but their midsoles are so comfortable that it sometimes makes up for other things being uncomfortable in the shoe, and this is no exception. It does a good job of providing enough cushioning whenever you're doing those longer miles, but it's also kind of fast enough feeling that if you do want to speed up a little bit, go a little bit faster, it's not going to restrict you from doing that. And I think that's also helped by a little bit of meta rocker going on here, not as much as some of their other shoes, like the Carbon X, for example, I would say has more of a rocker than this. The Bondi, this has a little bit of a rocker, enough to kind of help you transition, but doesn't have so much that you feel like you're on a rocking chair while you're running. My next pro is the way that the tongue connects in here. So it's gusseted tongue, but it's not just regular material, it's actually like a stretchy material that wraps around the side of your foot and connects all the way down onto the bottom. And I feel like that really hugs down around the sides of your foot and keeps you feeling secure in there. The tongue is also a good thickness. It's thick enough that you're not going to feel the laces pressing on the top of your foot, but also thin enough that it doesn't feel like it's in the way and bothering you. With it being a gusseted tongue, it's also not prone to moving around a lot on the top of your foot, which is really nice as well. And along with that, they actually changed the inside of this shoe. So if we take a look at the 5, it is going to be just kind of that stretchy material like I was talking about on the inside. If you go back and look at the 4, there's actually an inlay in here that is doing the same thing. I actually had this problem in the Ultra Paradigm 4.5, that there's this kind of like white inlay that you can see in there maybe, that actually starts to tear out. I only have probably maybe 200-300 miles in these shoes, and it's tearing out. And while that doesn't bother me necessarily a ton while I'm running, I do feel it, and I have to kind of get it adjusted into the right place every time I put these shoes on. You could probably just cut that out, but it is a problem that I actually developed after my review of these shoes that I am not experiencing because they fixed it in the 5. I also liked the heel counter actually in this shoe. So this is a thing that I tended to like in other shoes like the Pegasus or the New Balance Prism, and didn't like so much when it came to Hoka's shoes. For example, the Clifton here has a similar kind of design to it, but they've actually tweaked it enough in the Arahi that I'm not experiencing the problems that I was having in the Clifton. So the Clifton, I don't know if you can really tell, but it comes up a little bit too high, and it's also a little bit too pointy. And so whenever I was wearing these shoes, this heel counter was pushing up and poking into my Achilles. While it didn't cause serious problems, it was just annoying enough that it made me not want to run in these shoes as much. That is not a problem I was having with the Arahi. I felt like I had a good fit. I wasn't slipping up and down in the heel. It is a little bit shorter, so I wasn't getting poked in the Achilles with every step. It helps put the shoe on and off, and also kind of keeps it away from your foot a little bit more than kind of traditional heel counter shape. My next pro is what I think is going to be a big one when it comes to the durability of this shoe, and that is the outsole. So they added more rubber to the outsole. If you compare that to previous versions, there's the 4, and then there is the 3. The 4 and the 3 have the same rubber pattern on the outsole, but the current one is more similar to the Clifton actually. And this was an issue. I mean, like I said, I'm probably only maybe 200 miles into this shoe, and you can already see it's starting to wear in that one spot right here, and this one that has 600 miles on it is completely worn out in that same spot. And that was something that I talked about in the reviews of these older versions, is I wish they had a little bit more rubber just in that one spot that I was seeing wear very quickly, and they did fix that in this version. And my next pro is something that may or may not be a pro for you, but it was for me. I feel like this shoe has a little bit more width to it, and I like a little bit more room out for my toes to move around a little bit more as I'm running, which I didn't realize I wasn't getting from these older ones, but wearing this current version, I do like that I have a little bit more room in the toe box, a little bit more room across the ball of my foot as well. So let's get into some cons about the Arahi 5. So my first con was whenever I first put it on, I was a little bit worried because it felt super stiff. And I would say it probably is a little bit maybe more stiff than previous versions, but once I got it broken in a little bit, it did kind of loosen up some and wasn't a concern as much as I thought it was going to be when I first tried these on. I did notice also a lot of movement in the heel when I first put these on as well. I think because of the stiffness, but as that kind of loosened up, that no longer was an issue. I also did heel lock on these because of that movement, and that seems to have taken care of that problem for me. My next con is something that I talk about when I talk about pretty much any of Hoka's shoes, and that is the fit. So while I love a lot of Hoka's midsoles, I sometimes keep wearing the shoe just because of how much I like the midsole, but a lot of times the fit just doesn't quite work for my feet. So they tend to be a little bit more curved of a shape, and that means that my foot is going to spill over the medial side here. It's going to press a little bit along the lateral side, kind of push in on my little toe. And also the way that Hoka designs their shoes, you're supposed to kind of sit down in them, not on top of the midsole, so it kind of comes up around the sides. And that means that whenever I'm spilling over the medial side here, I do feel a little bit of this kind of wall pushing up into my arch a little bit. So that is definitely something to be aware of when you're trying on pretty much any of Hoka's shoes, is if you feel like it's giving you a lot of arch support, maybe think a little bit more about that decision, because it could be this piece pressing up on the bottom of your foot and it might get uncomfortable after a little while. My last con is, along with a little bit more width to this shoe, which I like, I feel like there is a little bit more volume as well. So from top to bottom, I feel like this shoe gives you a little bit more room than the 4 or other previous versions, and that might be a good thing for you. But for me, I have a lower volume foot, and that means that my laces are going to be coming super far together. As time goes on and this shoe stretches a little bit more, those laces will probably be coming farther and farther together. And while it's not a huge deal, because I still get a good lockdown in this shoe, I don't feel like I'm sliding all over the place, I do feel like my foot is kind of getting a little bit lost in there. So will I continue wearing the Hoka Arahi 5? I definitely will. I've actually been reaching for this shoe over my Arahi 4s, partially because it's my new one, so it's a little bit more fun, but also because I do like the fit and feel of the current version a little bit more than the previous one. I'm happy that there is going to be probably a little bit more durability to this shoe than previous versions as well. This is my go-to long run shoe that I'm going to be wearing pretty much every Sunday of the year. Just those smaller cons like the fit and that type of thing are outweighed for me by how much I like the midsole in this shoe and how well it works for me on my longer runs. So this shoe is definitely one that is worth checking out, especially for people that tend to overpronate a little bit, even people that have tried to wear other Hoka shoes in the past and had too much of that kind of narrow midfoot curved shape to them. This one isn't quite as bad as something like the Clifton for me, so this one might be worth a shot if you have that type of foot. So I hope this view of the Hoka Arahi 5 was helpful. If it was, be sure to like and subscribe down below. Check out the link to my Patreon in the description, and I will talk to you guys next week.